Hey, did you miss me? I've been out sick, and since I've been gone, the Sabres still haven't won a hockey game. We got an 8-game losing streak. We got to catch up on palm trees and taxes. Wow, a lot has happened since we've been away. We'll get to it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, and thanks for making today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can check us out on our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for tuning in. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you would like to keep in touch, if you would like to get news updates, line combinations from practices, game stuff, all ahead on the Sabres schedule and the coming days, you could get all that at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. The Sabres are on an 8-game losing streak, and I've been gone for a week. You could probably hear it in my voice why I've been gone. When the vocal cords start to go as a radio host and podcast host, I mean, there's really nothing you could do about it other than I have chugged more tea in the last week than I probably have in the last 3 years combined. And I've learned something about myself. Not really a tea guy. You know, it's fine. It's fine. I put a lot of honey in it, so I'm into that. They wouldn't make it as sweet as possible, but I learned I'm not really, I'm a tea guy. I'm a coffee guy, definitely, for sure. So unless I'm, if I'm sick, then you got to do it. So we're gonna keep going here. We got the tea. We're gonna keep getting the voice back to full strength. Hopefully by the time the Sabres win a freaking hockey game or do something, it has definitely been, I should say this, not being able to do this show this week has been infuriating. Not like you might think, oh, well, actually timed out well. You got sick right when they lost a million games, and it's been horrendous. These are the shows that I want to do, not because I want to do them, because I feel like I need to do them. I felt like I needed to get in front of a microphone and talk about what Kevyn Adams had to say last Friday, but I just didn't have it in me. I felt like I needed to get on a microphone and talk about blowing another multi-goal third period lead to the Red Wings earlier this week, but I just didn't have it in me. Talk about an inflatable palm tree being thrown on the ice, and waking up this morning, if you were to go to ESPN.com and click on NHL, the homepage says, headline, Buffalo Sabres clarify stance on fans' inflatable palm trees. I mean, what world are we living in? If I had gone back in time to August and ran into myself, and he asked, oh, how's the season going? I hope it's going great. Lindy's back. And I showed him that headline. We're clarifying stances on inflatable palm trees. That's how the season is going. Not going well. Not going well. So a lot to get to on today's show. I want to talk about Adams and kind of his job security, the strategy. What are they going to do next? I know there's trade conversations about a lot of different Sabres that are out there in the media. If you missed that, we'll get to that a little bit later on, and then more in depth on our next show. Dylan Cousins is reportedly getting interest from around the league, according to Elliot Friedman. So that is one thing to keep an eye on as well. But we'll talk about the losing streak today and Adams, and then what's ahead a little bit more today. And then tomorrow we'll talk a lot about Cousins and the trade market there. Today's show probably a little bit shorter. You can hear it like solo show. Obviously, I'll go as long as I can. Typically, we try to keep these episodes around 25 to 30 minutes. Today might be just a few minutes shorter. Just a heads up on that front. Although what am I even give a heads up for? You could see it. You could see it. You could see how long it is at the bottom there. So actually before I know. So get to all that coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. But listen, let me just on the losing streak, riff a little bit on the losing streak here. It is not, to me, that surprising. Now, the way it's happened in a couple of these games is a little bit surprising, I would say, but I've been telling you since the summer, and I will keep reiterating it, I just don't think this team has scoring talent. I think they have a pretty good goaltender. I think they have pretty good defensemen, but they haven't had one of those defensemen. Dahlin's been out. I think they lack the scoring punch. And I think that's been their biggest issue on this losing streak is they've had their chances, but other than Tage Thompson, nobody is consistent at burying them. You needed JJ Peterka to become a player like that, but he's sitting on like 1 goal in his last 14 games. So he's not doing it for you. And Peterka now, by the way, is probably headed or nearing healthy scratch territory. Against the Rangers on Wednesday, he was bad. He got benched in the second period, and then he came out and he played great in the third period. He maybe saved himself in Saturday's lineup at Washington. But he has not played well at all because his job is to score goals, and that is not happening. Jack Quinn has not done that all year, as we know. Dylan Cousins has not done that all year, as we know. It is really the kid line. As I dubbed a couple years ago, the Legion of Zoom has become the Legion of Gloom. I mean, there is nothing happening with any of those 3 individuals. None of them are playing together anymore, like you would have dreamed of 2 years ago, that they're going to be a second line for 10 years to come. That's not happening. Jason Zucker has played really well. He had a great game the other night against Detroit. I thought he was easily the Sabres' best player in that game. But he's a 30-plus-year-old veteran that's a little bit past his prime. That was only a pretty good player in the first place. Like, you can only ask him to do so much. You cannot ask Jason Zucker to be one of your most critical forwards. I mean, you're in a bad spot if you are asking him to be more than a good third liner. He's been a great third liner for them this year. 20 points, 29 games. He's been solid defensively, but asking him to be more than that, you can't ask him to be a top-line player and expect to be a great team. Ryan McLeod, same thing, like pretty good. Jordan Greenway, pretty good. Obe Kubel, like him as a fourth liner. I like Lafferty as a fourth liner, although he's been out. Malenstein as a fourth liner. Like these new guys they've brought in to play bottom 6 roles have done their jobs. When you ask them to play a level above, you're not going to get good results. You're putting them in the wrong position. So instead, who's in that position are the young guys, and they are not developing. And they now, which maybe isn't too different than in the past, are cracking under pressure. We talked about the blown lead a couple of weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, I guess now, to Colorado, and this blown lead against Detroit. I mean, just getting in their own heads, and it's like they expect to lose hockey games. They expect something to go wrong. And that's in addition, in my opinion, to them being a subpar team when it comes to just their overall talent level. I don't think they're as good as the team that they're playing most nights. When they played Colorado a week and a half ago, I don't think they're as good as Colorado. But when you're a professional hockey player and you have a 4-goal lead, you can't play like you believe that. You can't play like oh yeah, they're better than us. Because that's how it looked. It looked to me like they got panicky, that they thought, okay, here come the Stanley Cup champs of 2 years ago. Here comes McKinnon. Here comes Makar. Oh, look out. Dive off the train tracks. Like, that's how they looked. And I don't know what the excuse is against Detroit. You should not think that way again when you're playing the Detroit Red Wings. But it did. It happened again. And then the loss to the Rangers last night, or Wednesday night, I should say, is just... You don't score for two and a half periods, more than that. They didn't score for 55 minutes of that hockey game. They had their chances. The third period, they looked great, but they just couldn't bury it until finally Power got one and then Tage got one at the end when it didn't really matter anymore. So 8 games. And to me, no end in sight. No end in sight. I don't know that the Sabres look like a team that's going to turn this around. You want to tell me that the season is dead, and I will listen to that. The only thing that's holding me back a little bit, and this is going to make the 8-game losing streak even more frustrating for you. The Sabres are only 1 point out of last place in the East. Keep that in mind. They have 26 points. Montreal has 25 points. They are 6 points back of a playoff spot with months and months left. Like, that is not, you can make that up. The rest of the conference is begging the Buffalo Sabres, here, take it, end your drought. All you got to do is get a couple guys to develop the right way, and it's not happening, and they're not taking advantage. So there sits Philly. If the Sabres had gone 3-5 in this 8-game stretch that included a 5-game homestand, those are games in the NHL you are supposed to win. The Sabres have not done that for multiple years now, as win at home, which makes no sense. They couldn't do it. Had they just done it to that level, 3-5, it's not impressive at all. They'd be in a playoff spot. They'd be 1 point behind the Bruins. 3-4-1. A losing record would have given you the 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division next to Boston. Boston's terrible. They're losing by 8 every other night. The Sabres just can't take advantage of a gift right now from the Eastern Conference, which, I mean, the Rangers have fallen apart other than beating the Sabres the other night. They've lost 7 of 10. They've been bad. Ottawa hasn't picked it up. Pittsburgh's starting to a little bit, but like the whole conference is saying, can you get 89 points this year? That might be all it takes. And the Sabres right now are not answering the bell. They could not be playing worse. We got to talk about Adams and his piece in this and his faults that kind of have the roster being what it is. So we'll get to that coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I am not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider, honestly. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. You're going to see that 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including that ultimate plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer, get your 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We have not had a show. I'm sad to say. I'm sorry about that, especially with the last week. I mean, I know what even right now, I want to rant about this team, and I just, I can't do it. I want, the energy is in me, the will is in me. I just do not have the voice right now to do it. So you guys have been ranting for me on our text club. I've loved looking at that over the last week or so. If you want to sign up for that, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. I'll do my best with this, but I had to get on. It's been a week now, and it's still a story. It's still a story. The league is laughing at the Sabres, and they're laughing more so at their general manager. Kevyn Adams last week does a press conference, and it's starting to get taken out of context a little bit, but that was the fire you were starting when talking about excuses why the roster isn't what you want it to be. Yes, it is hard to get players to come here. I don't doubt that for a second. I don't doubt that when they call up a Brett Pesce, you're probably getting told no. When you call up a Martin Necas, you're probably getting told no. When you call up a Chris Kreider, they're probably not even taking the call. I get that. But I think what Adams represented to me a little bit was, well, let me just kind of push this off. This isn't my fault. This isn't the fault of not even that it's not his fault, because he did kind of own up to that a little bit. He said, the team not being where it is, we got to win. We got to prove it to these players to come here. What Adams to me doesn't represent is the reputation of the team league-wide is probably a big, big reason why players don't come here or don't want to come here. And that is, to me, beyond, oh, you're in Buffalo, New York. Because a lot of the league is like that, right? Liam McHugh from TNT had the funny tweet the other day, taking a little shot at them, or at Adams, when there was a tweet about Winnipeg being back in first place in the NHL, and McHugh said, "Oh, all those palm trees in Winnipeg, really doing the job there." Like Winnipeg, Toronto has taxes like you wouldn't believe for NHL players. All of Canada, really, I guess, for that. Minnesota, is not South Beach. Like there are a couple of southern teams that are really good. Florida is the team that comes to mind immediately that everybody wants to go there. Tampa. These teams do have advantages. But Florida was terrible forever too. It's not, you got to win. You got to have a reputable professional organization. And the Sabres don't, one, have the winning at all, furthest thing from it. And two, I don't know what player should believe they have the will to win. They know what it takes, because, they are kind of bare bones still when it comes to player development staff, when it comes to just people that work in the building. It's not like a lot of the other top organizations in the league. I mean, that extends to their front office, right? Pro scouting. Adams talked about that. Got asked a question about that, at least. Prospects or amateur scouting. It's not the same as a lot of other organizations in the league. And I will continue to believe that maybe they do understand this now, but when they were going through the fight with Jack Eichel over his surgery, I don't think they realized the damage they were doing when it happened, because this has been in my head as a thought, as a point, ever since the Amazon Hard Knocks version of the NHL that came out a couple of months ago at the beginning of the season. And Jack Eichel was featured in it, and he's sitting down there with dinner with his girlfriend, and then Noah Hannafin and Noah Hannafin's girlfriend. And what are they discussing? They're talking about Eichel's departure from Buffalo and not having the freedom to take care of his body the way he thought was best, and how that was so dragged out, and, headaches that he was dealing with when he would wake up in the morning during that time, and how he couldn't work out the way he wanted to. He couldn't get on the ice, right? They basically kept him in limbo for all that time, because what were they doing? They were holding him off the ice. They were playing games. I mean, I continue to always believe that if they were on a winning team, then Eichel goes to them and says, "I want this surgery." And within a second, they say, "Yeah, go ahead. Sure. That's fine." That's what I mean, what's what happened in Vegas. It's what happened with a lot of other teams. Told him that he'd be willing to do that, that you'd be okay doing that. I really wonder, you don't have to be a Jack Eichel fan. You could hate Eichel and despise him for wanting out, which, again, every year that passes, how can you blame the guy? He clearly got out at the right time. Even despite what you might think of Eichel, you got to recognize players around the league probably saw that, and they didn't forget it. Because if you are Chris Kreider, who, by the way, I might want to assume anybody out of USA Hockey, or most people out of USA Hockey of that age group, although Kreider's, I think, a little bit older, they know Eichel, and if they talk to him, what is he going to say about them? What are you going to think is positive about this experience, when that guy clearly, best thing that ever happened to him was getting out? Hannafin, of course, is one of these guys. I used to think about Hannafin as a trade idea, and then you think he's best buds with Jack. What is Jack telling him? He's like, "Dude, I had to sit and not do anything for 6 months because they had to be children about the surgery." I think that probably did a lot of damage. Kyle Poso spoke outwardly about it. I remember when it was happening. He was on the team, and he was like, the dude should have a right to do what he wants. I wonder if they realize that hurt them and maybe is still hurting them a lot. And maybe that sticks to the GM, which is why, like, I would be holding out hope that if that is impacting players from coming here, that one day when Adams is not the GM, that maybe they shed it. Maybe they shed that a little bit. But, Adams, I don't even know why he talked. I know he got asked, I think, by the media to speak, and he said yes. He doesn't want to look like he's hiding. I understand that. But there is nothing he is going to say that is going to make anybody feel any better about any of this, right? It's only going to further annoy people. It's only, like, to me, he got up there. I didn't even think the worst thing he said was about palm trees and taxes. I thought the worst thing he said was when he got asked about making a deal in season, and he said, I'm not going to make a knee-jerk trade that's going to set us back. Two things. One, man, if you're not going to make a knee-jerk trade now, you're really just never going to do it, are you? You're never going to try to save a season if it's going off the rails. You'd rather watch it die. And two, that's the problem with the Sabres' current general manager. Right there. That quote. The automatic assumption, that, if I make a knee-jerk trade, it's going to go poorly. It's going to set us back. No consideration at all to you can actually win that trade. He even said it himself right after that. Like, and then I'll make a trade and you guys will say I overpaid. So if he says that, think back to the summer. That's what was said about trading Matt Savoy for Ryan McLeod. I don't think a lot of people in Buffalo said it, although I said it and a lot of others did too. But it was more national scope, dunking on the Sabres. Like, you traded your best prospect for Ryan McLeod? Okay. People said that. And how's it going? Happy you made the trade? Because it seems to be going pretty well. What are you worried about what people said? It went well. Savoy's in the AHL. He might turn into something great. But Ryan McLeod's a good third-line center. What happened? What's the problem? Like the fear of getting made fun of for overpaying, the fear of setting back. What are you setting back? That's the other thing. What are you so afraid of ruining? I don't get it at all. It's hard to make trades for them. I know, but it's just a depressing time. 8-game losing streak. I did have the thought, like, I wonder if they go on a 12-game, 13, 14, 15-game losing streak, however long it gets, if they could fire Adams in the middle of it. Because when Ralph Kruger got fired, they didn't want to do it. They had just given him more power in the front office, and they just signed his guy, Taylor Hall. He helped bring Taylor Hall here. They didn't want to fire Kruger, but then the losing streak got to 10. And then 11, then 12, then 13, then 14. And I think that's when they did it. Finally, the losing streak got so ridiculous, they had to look like they had a pulse. So they fired Ralph Kruger. And I wonder if the same thing could happen here. Of the losing streak gets so ridiculous, they got to do something. And the next thing to happen if they got to do something is the GM getting canned. When we come back, we'll look at what's ahead, not just for the Sabres, but on this show, because there are some trade ideas that I really want to talk about coming up in the next couple of days here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. So stay tuned for that. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres presented by Gametime. Gametime, best place to get tickets. This new feature called Gametime Picks makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. They've got great features. One of my favorites is when you're scrolling through and they show you the view from your seat that you would have. That way, you know what you're going to get. If you're up high, like, okay, this is my angle. I can see the whole ice. If I'm down by the glass, this is how the curve of the glass is going to be. So the back right corner, that's going to be distorted a little bit. Let me go up a couple of rows above the glass. All that available on Gametime, the most user-friendly ticketing app in the ticketing industry. So again, download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres also presented by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the rest of this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, looking at what's ahead for the Sabres and what's ahead for us here on the show. I'm excited about our next couple of episodes. Some good topics to get to about roster management and movement and Adams' place and all of that. So first up, though, Sabres now go on the road. Amazing that they only got 2 out of a possible 10 points on their 5-game homestand. What a joke. Now they go on the road. They actually play better on the road. They probably end their losing streak on the road. That'd be my hunch. They have 5 of their next 6 on the road, including the next 3. And honestly, here comes your snark. They really have 6 road games in a row because the Leafs is the home game in the middle there. And we all know how that's going to go. On Friday, December 20th, that game is going to be 1 week from tonight. It's going to be packed with Leaf fans. In the meantime, Saturday at Washington, Capitals have been tremendous all season long. That's not easy. Sunday at Toronto, if you are a Bills fan, which most Sabre fans are, no, not all, but most Sabre fans are, 5 o'clock against the Leafs when the Bills play at 4:25 in Detroit. My guess is if you go out to a Buffalo sports bar and there are 50 TVs, 50 of them are going to be on the Bills game. Maybe 1 on the Sabre game if you're lucky. So that might be a game that a lot of Sabre fans skip, but we'll see. Tuesday, that's why you want our text line, by the way, because we'll keep you updated. Tuesday, Sabres play at Montreal. 7 o'clock, that'll be their easiest game in the next couple, and then they return home next Friday to play Toronto. For our purposes, there is a Dylan Cousins trade rumor. Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts today said that there are teams calling the Sabres about Dylan Cousins and that there is interest in acquiring him. The vultures are circling the carcass. And I am a little surprised that Cousins would generate interest, but I guess I kind of understand it. In one hand, my thought has always been that player right now looks shot. He looks like he has no confidence, and he's under contract on a big cap hit for a long time. Good luck trading it. But I guess what's coming to fruition is more of another argument, another, take on it, which is he's 23 years old. He has proven in this league already to score goals, to be a good offensive player, 30-plus goals and 68 points 2 years ago. He is shattered confidence-wise. He's on a team where he's been asked to do too much. And if I could get him on my team in a proper situation, proper role, good veterans around him, I can turn that player around, and I can get him right now at his lowest price. I don't think the Sabres will move him. 2 reasons. 1, if I'm going to give them credit for anything, it's got to be that they're smart enough to know not to sell it at the lowest value of an asset. 2, as Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski pointed out on a podcast this week, what they've heard around the league is that, not surprisingly, Kevyn Adams overvalues his players. So he's probably not, if a team's calling him right now about Dylan Cousins, looking for a buy low, he's not giving them the buy low price. He's giving them the Kelly Blue Book price on Dylan Cousins. So I doubt that they're going to move him. We'll get more into, though, whether it's actually ideal or possible that they could move him, or whether they should be afraid to move him, because I do think there's an argument that they shouldn't be afraid to move on from Dylan Cousins, who, by the way, at practice this morning was on the wing again. Like, his transition to the wing might be happening in real time on the Sabres roster. So That's where we're at. We'll talk Cousins. And then the other guy I want to talk about, but we'll do this more briefly, maybe a little more extended, is Alex Tuck. They have a decision to make about Alex Tuck in the next calendar year because he's only got 2 years left in his contract. And are they going to want to re-sign him at 30 years old? There are a lot of more layers, though, to Tuck. There's emotional layers. There's him being a Sabre fan. So we'll get to all that coming up on the Locked On Sabres pod. All right, but that's going to do it for me today. If you would like to check out one of our sister shows, be sure to check out Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Steele and Flip, and then Locked On Bills with Joe Marino. Get you ready for Bills and Lions. All right, I did a half hour. Just kind of happened that way. I did have to hit the pause button a couple times to cough, but we made it through. So on the mend, we'll talk Cousins trade, and hopefully the Sabres can get this win streak in the bag, get it, or losing streak done with, get it over with. We'll see if they're able to accomplish that Saturday night against the Capitals. We will talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.